Before we start the presentation, I want to be sharing some important vocabulary. Organic materials, the things you put into your compost pile that decomposers feed on, turning them in to compost. This is separated into two different categories: nitrogen materials, which are often green and wet, and carbon materials, which are often brown and dry. Nitrogen materials. These are often green and moist, such as fresh glass clippings, fruit and veggie scraps, and fresh flowers. These are often known as greens. Carbon materials. These are often brown and dry, such as fallen leaves, eggshells, and sawdust. These are often known as browns. Things that can be composted. Greens, also known as nitrogen materials. A few examples of these include fruit and veggie scraps, fresh flowers, fresh grass clips, weeds, sod, coffee grounds, and organic/backyard manure. Part 2. Things that can be composted. Browns, also known as carbon materials. These include bread, eggshells, sawdust, dead, dry, and fallen leaves, tea and coffee bags, shredded paper, and ash. Things that cannot be composted. A few examples include bones, salad dressing, meat, oils and fat, peanut butter, chicken, cat litter, and dairy products. Fun fact: did you know that meats do not compost, but instead turn into oil and coal? But don't get too excited. This process would take a few million years, and that's a very long time. For more specific examples, these two tables will educate you for more information. Now I'll be transitioning onto Sahana, who will be explaining how do you compost.
Hi, I'm Sahana. It's good that you guys are taking the initiative to compost. Okay, so when you get started to composting, there are a few steps that you need to take. And in bin composting, you obviously need a composting container. So your first step is to get a normal container and make little holes on the top or the cap, around and on the bottom of the bin. And if you don't or can't do these steps, then you can go ahead and buy a composting bin. And another third and optional step is to put your made or bought composting bin in another container. This is so the second bin will collect all the liquid fertilizer that is made when you compost. Okay, so when you start making the compost pile, you first want to gather all your materials. Shriram already mentioned the materials you need, your greens and browns. First, you want to put a 4-inch layer of browns at the bottom of your composting containers. Then you have to put alternating layers of greens and browns into your composting bin until it's full. There are also a couple things you need to consider when composting. Every single piece you put in your composting bin needs to be small so it decomposes faster. So if you have a couple of big pieces that you're going to put into your composting bin, make sure to tear them up or cut them. And your composting pile also has to be moist. So make sure all the pieces are wet. And every week or so, use a shovel-like or pitchfork-like or tool to mix up the compost so it can decompose faster. And if you don't want to use a container, there's also an option to bury organic materials in the ground to make the compost. If you want, you can go ahead and do further research on that. The fruit and vegetable waste that you put in your composting bin should also be buried, for the best result, 10 inches deep, so that flies that you don't want to come around your composting container won't come around. Here is a reference picture. So the top bin is the bin that has holes, the air holes, and collects the solid compost. And it's inside another bin, the gray bin, that collects the liquid fertilizer. Now to Sati for using the compost.
Hi, my name is Sahiti, and I'm going to say how to use the compost. First, I'm going to talk about solid compost. To give solid compost to the plants, first you have to loosen the soil that you're going to give the compost to. You can take a fork and kind of make the soil softer. Then you have to pour in the solid compost. Each plant should get about one handful of compost, but all fruit plants, big and small, should get 2 handfuls. After that, you have to water the plant and make sure the soil is nice and moist. Now, I'm going to tell you how to use liquid fertilizer, how to give the liquid fertilizer. First, you have to start by diluting the liquid fertilizer by mixing it with water. You have to mix it with water in a 1:10 ratio. So for example, if you have 100 milliliters of liquid fertilizer, you have to mix it with 1 liter of water. Then, you have to make sure the soil of the plant that you're giving the fertilizer to is moist. After that, you have to pour in the diluted fertilizer. Each small plant can take about 250 milliliters of diluted fertilizer. Each big plant can take about 500 milliliters. Now we're going to be showing you what we've been practicing at home and how we've been making our compost.
We compost outside, so I'm just going to take you there.
There might be a little bit of Wi-Fi problems.
Sorry if there's any Wi-Fi problems. Okay. So, this is the composting bin that was shown in all our pictures. And as you can see here, there's holes, like air holes. And this is the bin that collects the liquid fertilizer. If you remember the time we told you to bury fruit and vegetable waste 10 inches underneath, well, this bin isn't big enough for that, so we buried it around 3 inches underneath, but 10 inches provides the best result. You can see composting materials in here. Like there's dead leaves over there and shredded paper, which are both examples of browns. Also, if the internet connection makes it that you can't hear anything, feel free to ask me to repeat it. We also bought a composting bin recently, so we decided to compost there as well. This is the composting bin that we bought, and it has air holes. You can see the air holes here. And this composting bin also comes in touch with the ground, and there's no bottom, which means that organisms in the ground can come up into the compost and help decompose it. And it's much bigger, as you can see.
There's also
so it helps compost decompose faster. Our composting bin also has a window where you can open and see it. Also try to do a little bit of backyard composting, which is when you bury the compost. So just if you want to do that, you can research on it a little bit more. Okay. Now to Lakshman with the ending credit.
So this is the appendix and our citations. So if you want to learn more about the subject of composting, these are like the links and citations for it, and like these are a few more links for it. And then the end credits, like the organization, fonts, and art, the colors, and the pictures were done by Sriram. The introduction was me. The format was Sriram. How to compost was done by Sahana and Saiti. What to compost was by Sriram. And why to compost was me, Sahana, and Sahiti. And we got a few information from our grandma. And,
she's actually the one that inspired us to compost in the first place. She started this whole process, which was nice of her.
and the citations, all of us like put them down. So now I'm gonna open up the floor for questions, like Q&A. If anyone wants to ask, you can like unmute and ask.
Awesome job, guys. Awesome job. You guys did wonderful. Lakshman, can you go ahead and maybe stop sharing, and maybe we can all see, and then we can go ahead and ask questions, and maybe we can refer back to the slides too, if anyone has any questions about any specific slides. So yeah, as Lakshman said, we're opening it up to the audience. So if you have a question, please do unmute yourself and ask a question.
Hey Lakshman, this is Kiran here from Seattle,
Yeah.
with my son Achyut too. How long does it take, for the compost to get really used in the garden?
I would say about
About what?
a month.
A month. Okay. Thank you.
Hello, this is Srija from Dallas. How would you suggest composting in the winter as it's like really cold outside?
I'll let Sahana answer that question.
So composting in the winter is literally done the same way, but it takes a much longer time, and your composting bin can even start to steam. Really, there's no advice. You just have to continue doing what you do, but it's just going to take a longer time.
Okay, thank you.
Hi, this is Shweta from Houston. I have a question. So, when do you recommend to use this compost? Before the bedding, or because I just started the gardening, so I'm like a sophomore beginner. So, can you guide me? Like, when do you actually use this compost? Like initially, or
You need to wait for the compost to like develop for a few weeks. Then once like there's no material left and it's like really and like soily, that's when you want to plant your plants in them.
But to be honest, compost can be used in like any stage of the plant. So even if it's like really young versus a big tree, because compost is like literally essentially nutrient-filled soil. So you can use it anywhere.
Oh, hi, this is Swati from Houston. First of all, it's a great information. I learned a lot. Thank you guys for putting this together. But I do have a question, because for liquid composite, how you said you have to dilute it and you gave a proportion, so we don't put too much. For solid composite, what do you recommend? Like, of course, it depends on the plant size, but just to give some ideas. I'm very, very new to gardening and I don't want to put too much and burnt the plant. So what's the recommendation there?
I'll let Sriram answer that.
Okay, sure.
The amount I would use was, like, as it said, a handful for the fruit plants. A handful for the regular plants, and 2 handfuls, small and big, for the fruit plants.
Also, maybe you could give a little bit more to like developing, like if you're growing trees, then they would probably need more since they're going to grow up to be big trees.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for your answer.
Yeah, and this is Padma. And if you have any potted plants, you can put like a teaspoon or tablespoon.
Okay.
Than that.
Like, for example, I'm just asking more like basic plants we typically have, like curry leaves or lemongrass, those kind of plants I'm asking.
Yeah, I can say like 1 teaspoon, not more than.
Oh, okay, that's good to know then. Okay.
There was a question asked in the chat, and it says, is it okay to compost too many high nitrogen materials or too many high carbon materials? And actually, yes, it's okay. So once we tried to actually compost only greens or nitrogen materials, and it turned out fine. It's just that the best result would come if you used both greens and browns. And actually, browns should be slightly more. Not slightly, but like more.
Yeah.
Go for it. Yeah.
Hi, this is Sridevi from Dallas. Yeah, you guys are really doing very well, and I got so much information. And I have one question. So if we bury the material in the ground, does the process takes more time?
Generally, if it's in your like backyard compost instead of a composting bill, generally the result most likely if you use the same materials will be the same, but it'll take maybe a few weeks longer than if you used a bin.
Okay. Okay. Good job.
You're welcome.
Doing good. Bye.
Hey guys, this is Kiran from Pittsburgh. I have a question. So if I'm planting the plants right now and you're saying the compost will take like 1 month to build. So what do I do right now? Like, do I just throw some shells and everything in the plants I'm planting right now? Or is there any recommendation on what to use?
Well, actually, compost has many nutrients, and it would be the best for your plants. But if you don't have compost, or if you're waiting for compost to develop, you can just gather a lot of other soils with nutrients. And obviously, you'd spend more money. But if you want to grow plants right now, then you can mix all of the other soils, because the best soil comes when you mix all kinds of soils, and just wait for your compost to develop.
Thank you.
This is Polika. I had a quick question as well. So sometimes when compost doesn't like properly heat up or breaks or doesn't like break down the organic material, it tends to smell sometimes, and people shy away from the compost because of this. Do you have any tips, I guess, to avoid the smell from happening?
I would say like
The
generally people for the smell you have to make sure that they're like if you see like worms around your composting bin, that's generally good because it breaks up the decomposing organic matter much faster. So it takes time. I mean, it takes way less time for the smell to even develop. So before the smell develops, the worms will generally eat everything. So essentially, you have to make sure your area is moist. So like water it once in a while to make sure worms are still there. So to avoid the smell, I would just say check for worms.
And also so one more thing is insects might be flying. Like the smell comes for a couple of reasons. One might be that you added too much water or too little water, or it could also be because you didn't bury the fruit waste down far enough, which would also attract flies and smell. Compost generally shouldn't smell that bad.
And also another way that you could get smells if you added too many greens or too many nitrogen materials. So just make sure that's like even.
Thank you.
Hi, this is Arnav from Dallas. You might have already answered this, but which season do you guys recommend growing compost?
Summer and spring.
Yeah, definitely.
Yes, summer and spring.
Hi, this is Raghuram from Dallas. How would you prevent animals, raccoons, from destroying compost pile?
Like, if you want to protect them, then just put it in a bin, because raccoons most likely wouldn't get into a bin.
Okay, thank you.
Hey, this is Mohan from Dallas. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Why go through the hassle, man? Why don't you just go to Home Depot and buy a bag of composted fertilizer?
Because compost isn't just like, it helps your plants, but it also decreases your carbon footprint. And because you're already using things that you're throwing in the trash, so instead of ending up in the dump where it most likely can't decompose, then you're just giving it a place to decompose.
Also, composting may seem hard at the beginning, but to be honest, it's just like if you get into the process, it's just super easy and it's a way to save a lot of money. So you can help the environment and save your garden and save money. So
yeah, and now
to be honest,
like
all you need is a little bit of time and determination.
Good answer, guys. Good answer. I really like that, how you answered that question.
Hi, this is Vinayak. I have a quick question. I mean, good work, good putting together all the good facts, creating a lot of awareness. So the nitrogen-based compost or carbon-based compost, I just seen the slide that you are using the organic ingredients, right? Organic stuff, nothing is chemical-based.
Yeah.
So can we consider this as an organic manure or organic fertilizer? Maybe.
Yes. That's why it's a way better alternative than chemical fertilizers. It's like a natural fertilizer with organic matter. rather than chemicals in your fertilizer. So it is definitely a better alternative.
That's good. Good information. You're kind of creating awareness not only how to grow a plant and protect a tree, but organically. Very nice. Good job. Keep it up.
You're welcome.
Wonderful questions. Do we have any more questions?
Yeah, this is Mansa from Dallas. So when you want to compost organic matter, like for example, when a banana peel turns brown, wouldn't that bacteria be harmful, or is that good bacteria for your compost?
It wouldn't necessarily be bad because the worms would most likely neutralize it. And it's actually good if while you're composting, organic matter starts to grow fungi and mold, because then worms will eat it and then they'll make soil more nutritious.
Okay.
So yeah, it's not bad if your banana turns brown. It's
Okay.
okay.
There was a question in the chat of someone asked, why is compost called compost? The answer is actually since compost decomposes, so the process is called decomposition. So to shorten it out, people call it compost instead of saying decomposition. So that's why it's called compost.
So if there aren't any other questions, I'm gonna let Kieran Uncle talk the VTSeva president talk about VTSeva's contributions to COVID-19 relief and aid.
So thank you, guys. Before I go, we have the youth team from Seattle also joined this conversation, and they have won the National Environmental Challenge last year. So if we have Pranati on the call, I would like her to talk a few words about the 30-day challenge that we have, did during the competition time. Pranati, are you on the call?
Yes.
Yeah. Can you please talk about the competition that we did in the summer?
Sure. So first of all, great job, you guys. That was so informative. I don't know too much about composting, only what I've learned in school, and this was really helpful to motivate me to start my own compost, so I'll definitely do that. Talking about the 30-day challenge, so some of you may or may not know that VTSeva held a nationwide eco-challenge, motivating youth across the country to come up with innovative ways to deal with climate change and how we were polluting and trashing Mother Earth, the earth that has given us so much that we should be thankful for. So through this, we got many submissions across the entire nation. There were so many great ideas about composting, people who brought composting to their schools, different innovative ways to ban plastic. And something we did here in Seattle was we did a 30-day eco-challenge. So we found that majority of the people were more motivated through some form of social media or something small that they can do every day. Some tasks can be very long-term, like composting. Sometimes it's a long-term activity and people may not get instant gratification from that, so they might quit. So what we did was we, in order to encourage people to work towards environmental awareness in the long run, we had small activities every day for 30 days. Some of it was use a reusable water bottle today, or start a compost pile, or only take metal utensils for school lunch today. So using that, we did small activities every day for 30 days to help get people started on the path to a more environmentally conscious life.
Hey, Lakshman, Ram, Sahana, you guys did an awesome job. I can imagine the background work that you have done in regards to putting this together speaks a lot about the depth of knowledge that you guys have gained in this process. This is amazing work. I used to do composting a few years back, but for me, we had a very small space, so it was too much for us to maintain, but we did get the real compost material that we could have used instead of going and buying those compost materials in Home Depot. So great work in doing the research and educating all of us in regards to what's the benefit to the Mother Earth in using the things that we usually take for granted and throw away. So thank you for doing this effort. And in regards, and Pranati, thank you for explaining about the project that we did. And we are hoping that next year when we do this, or this year, when we do this competition, we are hoping that many more youth teams across the nation would participate in this and come up with very interesting projects on how we could contribute towards the environment, which is one of the service pillars of VTSeva service activities. And in regards to the current situation, relief aid that we are doing, I'm pretty sure everyone is involved in trying to make a difference across in the current situations of providing either food for the people who have been impacted, to the homeless shelters, and also helping the medical workers by providing them the personal protective equipment, or also in India. And you could see the numbers right on your screen, the impact that the VTSeva chapters across, VTSeva and JET chapters across 37 to 30 to 40 cities, we together have been doing this project over the past couple of weeks, and we have raised $100,000+ to be able to provide things like food banks to the food to the food banks, and masks to the various hospitals to the highly impacted cities, and also importantly the meals to the daily wage workers, to the migrants who got stuck with the lockdown restrictions in India. We've been able to provide all these for these respective causes. Next slide, please. Do we have the next slide on this? So here you can see the VTSeva volunteers in India. Though they have been locked down and much more stringent than what we have been experiencing in the US, they were able to reach out and provide these kind of services to the people who were really impacted. So overall, both from India and from US response, it is very encouraging to see that everyone is coming forward and responding to the opportunities that we have to serve. And especially you guys in Dallas have done a tremendous job again in able to, next slide please, in supporting the North Texas Food Bank as you usually do, and also for the Newton Medical Center. Now this is one example of so many branches coming together and being able to respond to the causes that we have. So thank you again for doing this, doing this project and educating us, and also in providing the COVID response.
So I hope you guys learned something new, and have a good week. And I hope you start composting soon. And with that, we'll conclude this session.
Wait. There were some questions on the group chat. So there were some, the first one was, can you put seeds in a compost bin like mangoes and avocados? And
yeah, I answered that to Abye. I sent a private message. Yeah, seeds can be used because they are nitrogen materials. So yes, you can use them.
And also to buy a compost bin, you should make sure it has air holes and
find a bin that's appropriate for the size of what you're going to compost. So if you have a lot of kitchen waste or a lot of yard clippings, then buy a pretty big bin. And yeah. Thanks for coming.
Thank you. I'm not composing from today.
I'd like to say thank you to Kieran Uncle, the Seattle youth team, and the members from Houston and Dallas to join this. And thank you all very much for joining. It meant a lot to us. And I hope you guys start composting.